In terms of the broad historical context of this, can you tell me a little bit like how assassinations or assassination attempts have basically shaped American political history in the past?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a new topic or probably even one that's unique to the United States. Assassination or just the idea that killing a public figure is going to achieve some sort of end has been around for a long time. We've had, multiple presidents assassinated, other public figures, and people who studied this topic have almost always concluded that it's not a good strategy. It doesn't really ever achieve the aims that a person is thinking that they're going to achieve. So. Uh, it probably goes without saying, but I would consider myself opposed to, acts of political violence and assassination.
So, are we in unprecedented times, or are there parallels that we can draw between this moment and other times of pretty intense, political division in our country?
I don't think we're in unprecedented times, um, in the sense of political tension or the frequency of things like assassination attempts. I think those have been around, as long as our country has. We definitely go through ups and downs of political tension and disagreement, and obviously we're at a pretty heightened time right now. But we also fought a civil war where we were literally at war within our own country for 4 years. So we've been in intense times of disagreement before, and I think if there is a positive to look at in contrast to these intensive divisive times is that it usually eventually be is followed by times that are a little less divisive, and hopefully that's something we can move towards, and maybe it's an opportunity to, when bad things happen that we really don't want to happen, maybe it's a time to step back and say, oh, well, how can we have less of this sort of intense disagreement?
Okay, so we have seen moments in our history where there was a political act of violence and we saw tensions cool.
Mhm.
What do you think drives that shift?
I think that that would be a hard one to come up with a real definitive answer on. But I think what I can say tends to happen is that what we focus on as a country shifts, right? So if you look at the period after the U.S. Civil War, for example, eventually. The way that commerce works in the United States, and the way our economy is shaped starts to change. And so different alliances form, different rivalries form over a different set of issues. In a sense, after the Civil War ends and after slavery is banned by the Constitution, and we have our first, things like the 14th and 15th Amendment that are the kind of the first efforts at uh, reconciling civil rights, and sort of solving that issue in the sense of having a legal um, uh, answer to the right and wrong in that situation, and one side clearly, wins the war, then it can sort of be put aside, and we move on to another set of issues. Uh, I'm not sure in the present sense, what that next thing is going to be, right? It's always uh, the future is always kind of hard to predict. I mean, we don't know what cultural shifts and economic shifts are going to occur over the next few years that might lead people to say, oh, all the things that we've been disagreeing on, maybe they're not as important as this new thing that's emerging that maybe we agree on, or maybe we realign the ways in which we disagree.
Okay. Um, let's see. So when we look back at times when there have been assassinations in the past, have you seen what we're seeing now, which seems to be a lot of people almost supporting it? Like we saw that, in my opinion, it seems like the first time we saw it was with Luigi Mangione, right? Where there were people almost backing this person and acting like he was a hero. And it seems like I'm seeing so much on social media of people saying that this was a good thing or that the person who was targeted was actually to blame. Is this new or are we just seeing it more because of social media?
I think we're probably seeing it more because of social media, but yeah, unfortunately, it's not new. Any acts of political violence. I mean, that seems like an area where we should all be able to look at it and say, well, no, that was a wrong thing, and it was, a tragedy anytime someone is killed. Um, but you're right. Yeah, there are some folks who have not been able to kind of get beyond that political mindset and say, well, I disagreed with this person, so I'm not that upset that they're gone. And that has probably been the case, with every um, political assassination, and that there have been folks who have, focused on the fact that they're glad a person who they disagreed with is gone. But hopefully that's not the ever the majority view.
Okay, let's talk about my favorite punching bag. So, what role has the media historically played in public perception after acts of political violence?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with what the media chooses to cover. I think as you go further back in history, you see, as all the little stories sort of start to fade away, you're left with this sort of the big impressions. And so fortunately, those have usually been, the right kinds of things. People condemning violence, people sort of mourning the loss of someone that they respected, and those other voices sort of being filtered out as less important over time. I mean, we don't, I can't think of too many figures who've been shot or assassinated or attempted to had faced an attempted assassination where in retrospect, after a number of years pass, where people are think that was a good idea.
Okay.
And that's true on both,
Yeah.
throughout the political spectrum.
I'm curious if, back in the day of like during the JFK assassination or Martin Luther King, was the media at that time perceived to be so divided as left and right? Or in general, mainstream media, did they cover it sort of similarly from platform to platform?
Well, I wasn't around back then, but my sense is that, if you took, say, the JFK assassination, for example, obviously, um, you know, he he's a president who won a really, really close election in 1960, and that meant that there were a lot of folks in the country who didn't vote for him and who viewed him as a political opponent. But the coverage is almost I can't think of political coverage that was sort of anti Kennedy in
Yeah.
its coverage of the assassination.
And that's not the
Um,
case this time, it seems, depending on the network, I've noticed.
yeah, well, it depends, I guess, on what the media wants to promote. Which is to say, I think that then, just as now, there were certainly individuals who maybe didn't like Kennedy and were glad to see him gone. And there were probably individuals today who have negative feelings towards Mr. Kirk. But uh, if I doubt that that sort of animosity is the majority then or now. Uh, I think probably most people today, whether they liked this guy or not, it's not like people are all of a sudden saying, "Oh, well, it's just a good idea to shoot our political opponents or our adversaries." I don't think that that's a popular view.
Yeah. Okay, agreed. Looking back decades from now, when someone's studying what happened, what do you think historians would say would be the legacy of this moment?
Um, and this is, nothing uh, to take away from obviously the tragedy to this fellow and his family and supporters, but I don't think it will be a it, it will be remembered as maybe as big or as significant of an event as we tend to think it is this week when it is, just recently happened. And the reason for that is, again, nothing, not to take away from Mr. Kirk, but it's different when somebody is, in Kennedy's case, like the sitting president of the United States, or someone who, has a much bigger sort of global impact before they are assassinated. And again, not to take anything away from Mr. Kirk, but he's not the president. He's not an
Right.
elected official or a politician in the sense of running for office. So I think it'll be remembered as, a part of this larger, uh, you know, time of animosity.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I definitely is a different between a political, an elected official, but I mean, if you look at MLK, right? He wasn't elected, but people saw him as the head of a movement for change, right? And whether you liked the movement or not, I think a lot of people attributed Charlie Kirk as being a reason that President Trump was elected and got the youth vote that got him into office. I mean, that's got to weigh in probably to why this is so impactful.
Right. I think it's another good sort of cautionary tale of when you assassinate someone that you see as an opponent, uh, and of course, we don't know what's going through the mind of an assassin really, but if we assume that there's some opposition to a person's ideas, uh, you don't really get rid of those ideas when you get rid of the person, right? So
Yeah.
uh, Kennedy and MLK are assassinated. That doesn't stop the civil rights movement or the push for legislation and change, right? And I don't think uh, the assassination of Mr. Kirk is going to just put an end to ideas that he advocated.
Okay. When we look in the back in the past, when we see times of any sort of political violence or violent attacks in our country, how does that shape the way that Americans feel about their own safety and about their own democracy?
Uh, well, I think as far as democracy goes, it's disappointing, and it is part of this larger issue that we're having right now of um, uh, a number of folks sort of questioning the importance of democracy. As a political science professor, I have to say I'm on the side of pro-democracy. I hope that doesn't make me too biased, but I think democracy is a good thing. As far as personal safety, it's yet one in a very, very long string of, violent episodes that are uh, unfortunate and probably point to a need to change something about our society. And what that is certainly a matter of debate, but I think we'd probably all be better off in a less violent society. And We just have to, maybe, violent episodes can call our attention to the fact that we need some kind of change on that front.
My last question is really just looking forward. I know you said you can't predict what's going to happen, but based on everything you know about similar acts in the past, what can we expect in the months to come? What's next for America?
Well, and I don't mean to be crass or disrespectful, but I think that we'll move on to other things, right? I mean, if you think about the fact that over the last decade or so, we've had multiple members of Congress shot, and it's not like that changed how we feel about violence in this country. Maybe didn't make that big of an impact. We had a state legislator assassinated earlier this year, and that didn't change the conversation. Um, so I'm not sure that this one event by itself will uh, change all that much, but hopefully it is part of um, a bigger story about things that we do need to change.